What's up, guys? Thanks for watching. Would appreciate a like, subscribe, comment down below. Would love to see you engage, and thanks for watching. And one of those radical things that we're seeing, which I've never talked about this because I wanted to learn more about it. I've wanted to be very careful about the way that I talked about this. But the second part of Mamdani's base, this came out, and I was shocked by this. I was reading a report the other day about Mamdani because I've been so interested and so fascinated about, what's behind this guy. And I'm really fascinated by it. And the real second part of Mamdani's base is non-native born Americans. So that's a fancy way of saying immigrants. Immigrants are very, very supportive of Mamdani, especially from Middle Eastern nations, Muslim nations, African nations in New York City. And I think this brings up a couple of things that we need to begin to address. So I personally have become far more hawkish on immigration than most people, even most on the right, by the way. But I really thought this was interesting because, I think it's not only illegal immigration that needs to be cut off. It is also, in my opinion, legal immigration that needs to be cut off for a while. We need to get our stuff straight. We need to get everything in order here. And so I'm very hawkish on the immigration issue. And, all the open borders people, I think Alejandro Mayorkas should be in prison for what he did during the Biden administration. I think the guy should be in jail for the amount of people that have been killed by, not only by immigrants directly, but by, fentanyl getting smuggled over the border and all those things. But that's neither here nor there. But particularly in the case of Mamdani, given his association with radical Muslims like that, imam that we talked about earlier, and the really interesting and I think concerning events in Dearborn, Michigan, among other cities, it brings up, I think, a larger discussion about how as Americans, how as value-driven people, how as citizens, how as Christians should handle the rise of Islam and really of Islamic culture in America, which is not an Islamic nation. It is not a Muslim country. America is a Christian country, a Protestant Christian country. We're not a Catholic country. We're not a Muslim country. We're not a Hindu country. We're a Christian country. And we have religious liberty, which we'll discuss a little bit later. But as mentioned, I've been very hesitant to go all in on this for a while. And largely because I love a lot of Muslim people. I love a lot of my friends are Islamic. And all of them, by the way, are peaceful. None of them want jihad. None of them want to throw a Molotov cocktail into a church or something. None of them want that. Large Muslim associations, by the way, I remember I texted this to my dad, and that was, not many things shock my dad, but one of the things that really shocked my dad in the upcoming election was there was a group of, I believe, religious leaders, I believe a lot of imams in Michigan, I think, which is around Dearborn, Michigan, that endorsed Trump at a rally because he was going to end the genocide in Gaza, which he has, at least for now, ended the genocide in Gaza. And, so I was like, okay, that's really nice. And I know a lot of, Islam followers and Muslim people who are very peaceful, all of them, to be honest. Lots of admirable people in the world that take that as their religion. A lot of fighters that I like. A lot of people in the world that I like that are Muslim that I really enjoy talking with. And I should bolster it with this. I hope you guys know by this point, I am an unapologetic Christian. I am a Christian. I am proud to represent Jesus Christ. And hopefully I don't do a great job of it all the time, but I try to do the best I can in every situation that I am. But I am also, and this is, I think, a thing that Christians need to remember and understand in full, I am not opposed to people practicing other religions that are not mine in America. We are not a theocracy. We are a Christian nation, but that's different than being a theocracy. And the reason why this matters is, for some of the more hawkish people about, we're a Christian country, Christian nationalism, and I consider myself a Christian nationalist by that definition. But if we need to uphold freedom of religion. We can't ban Islam. We cannot ban Hinduism. We cannot ban atheism. We cannot ban, any of these other things. Because if we do not uphold freedom of religion in this country, freedom to worship, freedom to practice whatever religion you'd like to, even the openly satanic people, whatever, demonic religions all the ones I just listed, and that's nothing against the people that follow them. That's just the way I believe as a Christian. If we don't uphold freedom of religion, some radical could get into the court system, into the White House, and outlaw it and say, nope, we are only a Christian country. We are only a Muslim country. We're only a Hindu country, which is something I'm completely opposed to. We need to be very, very careful with how we frame this discussion. We cannot and should not ban other religions and say that, it is not lawful to practice. That's no different than Sharia law. That's no different than radical Christian orthodoxy that had people thrown into, vats of boiling oil. Like, we do not get people to become Christians by the way of the sword and by the way of force. We get them through, obviously, what Jesus did for us on the cross. That's what we believe. But we need to understand the fundamental nature and disagreement of the value systems in place and that we place on both things. And I think, in fact, I know, the best example of this is Europe. So Europe, in my estimation, has fallen completely. I think Europe's done. I think they're cooked. I do not think that Europe is going to recover at all from the descent into this multicultural, quote unquote, experiment that has happened inside of that continent. And what it's being completely decimated by, primarily, other than horrendous leadership and bad policy, which is everywhere in Europe, like no one's doing this right, are Muslims who have not assimilated. And again, they have been aided and abetted by policymakers who chose, quote unquote, tolerance or quote unquote, multiculturalism over cultural maintenance, cohesion, stability. They just said, nope. Europe is open for cultural business. Come on, they don't even, what is a European? We don't know. We like Indian food. We like, hummus. Whatever. And they just opened their borders and let everybody into that continent. And they are now really regretting that decision because they let a lot of people, partially enabled by us, by the way. I talked about this a couple shows ago in terms of the war on terror. Like partially because we blew up the Middle East and a lot of very well-meaning people said, I'm going to flood to Europe to get some stability in my life. And a lot of Muslims in Europe have assimilated, but some have not, which are leading to a very concerning level of both anti-European sentiment and anti-Muslim sentiment. And it's caused Europe as a continent collectively to fall into, again, like a genuinely like a suicidal death spiral. And I don't think they'll pull out of it. Like, I remember I went to Europe earlier this year for the second time, but like real, like Western Europe. I went to Italy for a trip. Probably about 7 or 8 years ago now, but I went to Britain and I was in London and I saw a bunch of things and I talked to a bunch of people who live there and I found it fascinating and I liked a lot of the people that I talked with, but I don't see a way out of it. I think there's too much instability. I think a lot of it's going to be very fast, and I hope they can, because I want people to live in peace, and I want Europeans to have peace. I want Middle Eastern people to have peace. But bringing it back to the can Islam and Western civilization coexist thing. One, I don't like the word Western civilization. I think because if Western civilization, by the way, is defined by Europe, I don't want any of that. I want American values. So I'm going to focus on American values because I don't want to focus on Europe. They're done. They're cooked. So can Islam and American civilization coexist with the American value system? And as a whole, I do not believe widespread institutionalized Islam can coexist. Again, this is a Christian country. It was founded by Protestant Christian values. And it should stay that way. It was not founded on Jewish values. It was not founded on Catholic values. It was not founded on Hindu values, on Islamic values. Protestant Christian values. And it should stay that way, because if we mess with that wiring deeply in that system, God knows what's going to happen if that goes away. And I don't want this to be an Islamic country. I want it to be America. I want it to be as it was for the entirety of its existence. And by the way, a lot of Muslims have found a home in America, and I want them to find a home in America. Again, I really enjoy a lot of Islamic people. Like, I think a lot of them have wonderful families. They're wonderfully nice people. Most of them, all of them that I know, actually, all of them. incredibly nice people, gracious, that they don't have hatred or bigotry towards anybody. I have never once, and this is the funny thing, like all the talks about like, oh my gosh, radical Islam. I've never met a radical Muslim, like in my life, never. And maybe it's because I'm sheltered or whatever, but I've been around the block, man. I've been all over this country. I've met thousands of people. I've been to a bunch of different events and everything like that. I've never once met a radical Muslim. Never once. But no one who really desires America as it was and wants to preserve and conserve America should want Islam to just overhaul itself and become an Islamic nation. Because if we lose that, we lose everything else, which I am not okay with at all. I'm sorry, I'm not. And I don't think anybody should be. Should we have freedom of religion? Yes. Should Muslims be able to live in peace in this country? Yes. Should they be able to pursue the American dream? Yes. But should we invert the entire system of American policy, government, whatever, to now be a purely Muslim nation? No, we should not be. And I stand very firmly on that fact, and I think we should be very concerned about that. Again, not an excuse to attack Muslims at all, not an excuse to attack Islam at all. People should be allowed to worship who they want to worship, just as Christians should be allowed to, just as Jews should be allowed to, and Hindus and all the other religions that we have in this country. But we cannot forget our roots as a Christian nation, as a Protestant Christian nation. We cannot. Because if we do that, good luck to all of us, because I have no idea what's coming down the pike if that happens.